I'm Heather Caldwell-Ware for GovExec, and I'm excited to welcome you to Collaborate and Secure, Enhancing Digital Experiences for Federal Agencies, presented by Presidio Federal and Cisco ThousandEyes. For years, federal agencies have been diligently working to create more efficient, user-friendly, and secure digital experiences for the public. However, we're still not at the point where digital is the default form of interaction. According to the White House, the public spends more than 10.5 billion hours annually completing government paperwork. And that's not just taxes, y'all. About this time last year, the Office of Management and Budget issued new guidance for creating a digital-first experience that prioritizes consistent design and user experience across agencies. Today, I'm joined by two experts who will share their perspectives on creating effective digital strategies and balancing innovation with security concerns. I'd like to welcome Tannura Elie, Deputy Assistant Commissioner in Revenue Collections Management at the U.S. Treasury's Bureau of the Fiscal Service. Tannura, I want to say hi.
Good afternoon.
All right. I'm also joined by Jason Warfield, the Head of Solution and Adoption Engineering at Cisco ThousandEyes. Jason.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. Without further ado, let's dive in. Tannura, I'm going to have you start. Could you tell us about your role and your experience with IT and digital services?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I serve as the Deputy Assistant Commissioner with the Revenue Collections Management in Fiscal Service, and Fiscal Service is an operational arm within Treasury, and we work with agencies to support payment collection activities. We offer electronic payment solutions that support over 400 agencies, and they have adopted an easier path, and as you said, a digital path for Americans to pay the federal government. And essentially, our goal is to deliver a modern experience to our partner agencies and their customers. And we know that the best way to do that is offering electronic payment options, as electronic payment options are more convenient, faster, and secure than paper checks.
Jason, your turn. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I lead a team of global engineers here at Cisco ThousandEyes. ThousandEyes is a SaaS platform that helps agencies and organizations consistently deliver great digital experience, whether those are internet-facing services, things like pay.gov, for example, or services that are used on a day-to-day basis to drive employee productivity. And the teams I'm responsible for, one team works with agencies and organizations during the sales process to understand their strategic initiatives, some of their business challenges and outcomes they're looking to drive, and then being able to recommend a solution that will provide the visibility they need to drive consistently great experiences for their users. And the other team engages with customers after the sale to make sure that they're adopting the technology, driving the business outcomes they expect, and continue to receive a return on their investment in the platform.
All right, that's a good at introducing yourselves. Tannura, let's dive in a little bit more about what the Fiscal Service does, because you already mentioned you partner with 400 agencies, and that's definitely a big part of making a consistent experience, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about what Fiscal Service does and some examples of what you're working on?
Sure. For Fiscal Service, as I said, we're part of the Treasury Department. We're one of the bureaus, and our goal is really in servicing the agencies and support. A lot of times behind the scenes, we process trillions of dollars annually in revenue collections and disbursements. When an American makes a payment to the government, or receives a federal benefit, for example, that money flows through Fiscal Service. We work with just about every government agency in multiple capacities, whether it's collections. And when I say collections, we do mean you're paying your tax payment, or you have a debt, a student loan payment, or a disbursement of Social Security or a tax refund reporting, such as any of the USA spending, through, and even our shared service model, where we offer government agencies procurement and HR services. And other government agencies are considered our primary customer at the Fiscal Service. We offer the financial management support and help um, that enables the agencies to focus on their customer and to give a sense of economies of scale for the federal government in terms of operating lot boxes, which are payments by mail or electronic systems, such as Jason said, pay.gov, or tax payment systems, which is our electronic federal tax payment system, in which millions of individuals and businesses pay their tax payments annually.
No, that's a great thing. So when I'm renewing my passport, I'm working with the Fiscal Service, even though I don't really know it, right?
Correct. Even though the front end part of whether you are mailing in your application and you've stapled and attached your check, that is coming through a PO box mail-in payment service that we operate the back end for the Department of State. Or if you are taking advantage of their new online process and your renewals, we still are processing that payment in the back end electronically to create a seamless integrated customer experience.
So, Tannura, I'm going to stick with you for a moment.
Sure.
We're talking about dealing with a seamless experience for a lot of agencies on something that's fundamentally, I mean, we're all used to making digital payments now, but, used to be a check. You used to have to wait. We used to have to watch for our tax refunds, right? So
right.
How, as you're dealing with payments, particularly, what are, a successful digital strategy ensures exceptional customer service and security. Can you walk me through some of the foundational elements of Fiscal Services digital strategy?
Sure. Heather, we've taken more of a data driven approach to ensure that agencies are capturing key data from their customers upfront and managing that customer relationship. The agencies know their customer. They know their behaviors. They know what they need, information they need, and what services they need. So the customer experience and the security become inherent because the agency is managing that relationship. Then that in turn allows fiscal to focus on the safe and secure processing of the financial transactions on the back end. That's the approach that we are looking for. And that's the design that we're looking for to make all of the interactions to combine not just that customer experience, but that digital safety, because the agency is going to know that customer better than fiscal, and that creates the security associated with that transaction.
Thank you for those insights. Jason, how have you seen other agencies balance service and security?
Yes, that's a great question, because there certainly is a balance in terms of security. Clearly is top of mind for everybody today, and paramount in terms of application security, perimeter security, data loss prevention, things like threat intelligence. But at the same time, you need to balance security with making sure that the user's experience accessing these digital services are simple as well as effective. So what we really see in organizations do is really start to converge the two and take more of a unified approach where historically these have been separate teams, separate domains, looking at separate sets of information and also using separate sets of tools. What we're partnering with agencies and organizations to do is really to help them mature their approach to take a much more unified approach to what we call observability and security, where they are all leveraging the same set of data to understand in real time where their posture is as it relates to security, whether that's policy security, application security, network security, while also having real-time visibility into the actual digital experience of the users. And If you think about it from, let's take payment as a great example. It seems simple, right? I go to the website, I enter my information, I authenticate in, I navigate through the forms, and then ultimately I have the ability to choose how I want to pay. In this case, let's say via digital payment. But as Tannura highlighted, there's many dependencies along that user journey that spans multiple agencies. That also has technology, some of which is hosted within an agency, some of it's hosted by another agency, some of it's hosted in the cloud. So we feel it's really critical to have visibility into the entire ecosystem, both things you own and control and things that you don't, that you leverage from a third party perspective, to ultimately ensure a consistently great user experience.
I saw Tannura sort of laughing a little bit. Payments seem simple, right? And I think, from the user perspective, it certainly seems that way to me. Like, here's my bank account, give me my money or take my money, right? Did you
Right.
want to add something to that, Tannura?
It that's the goal. That really is the goal, for it to seem like it's so simple. But as Jason said, there's so much that's happening in the background, and in terms of making sure Heather is who Heather says she is, making sure that she's paying the right amount, making sure that we pay the right customer the right time, in that we're making sure that that payment integrity is accurate from the beginning to the end.
While I'm on you, Tannura, can you
Sure.
share some of the biggest challenges that you have when you're trying to make these seamless digital experiences? And I'm sure a lot of it just there's so many people actually involved in this, multiple agencies, there's transparency issues, there's audibility. Hit me. What do you got?
All of the above, Heather, all of the above. We work closely with our federal agency partners to really try to meet them where they are, whether we are communicating, our strategy for the future in collecting electronic payments, or where we are trying to help them get to a space where their upfront interaction with their customer delivers that seamless digital experience. However, the challenges we've seen are, the normal everyday challenges of resources, people, money, budgets, and aged infrastructure. It actually, really takes time to get not only the agencies, but the individuals to buy in on the actual transition to electronic. If they've always sent in their tax return with the check, helping them understand and quickly realize the benefits of moving to a more automated electronic process, and how it's quicker and safer and more convenient, is always going to be the challenge. And we are making sure that we are, partnering with our agencies to do that across the board, and helping not only the agency realize that seamless interaction, but the customers as well.
Jason, do those sound like familiar challenges?
Absolutely. I'll share a couple of customer examples. So one of the agencies that we work with, they have a public-facing application that they own the application, but the application is actually hosted by a different agency. And they were having a situation where users in certain parts of the country were having disruptions accessing the application. And it was a challenge figuring out where in that ecosystem, I'll call it, the problem existed. And there was a bit of frustration kind of building between the two teams in terms of everything looked good individually, but from a user perspective, things were not performing well or as expected. So being able to have that full visibility, they were able to quickly identify the issue. In this case, was within the hosting environment, within the network where the application was being hosted. So it eliminates the finger pointing and really helps the agency take the appropriate action to really restore the service for their users. And so that's one example. Another is we've seen increasingly more people working remote, at least part of the time. So if you think about hybrid work, when the employee wakes up, wherever they choosing to work, they open up their laptop. They fully expect to be able to access the services they need to be productive. And the reality is there's a lot of things that can actually disrupt that experience. And many times it's not the agency's technology at all. So one of the things we've been able to do is really extend that visibility into the last mile, wherever the users are working. And that's really helped identify, chronic issues, many of which exist inside the user's home with their own Wi-Fi and connectivity. But at times it's also within the office. So really the key thing is being able to make sure that anytime the user experience is disrupted, that impacts their productivity, being able to identify, is this application or infrastructure related? Is this something that we as an agency own and control and can address? Or is it something we need to work with one of our partners? And that partner could be an external agency. That partner could be one of their providers to resolve, and being able to do that in a proactive manner that minimizes any business disruption.
Tannura is nodding her head. Do you have some tricks or at least some tips for our agency friends who are navigating big partnerships like this? Like how do you help keep everyone moving in the right direction and not pointing at each other going, I think it's you, your stuff is broken?
Yeah, the finger pointing game is a fun game to play when you're not in it. I think the biggest tip I will say is that communication has been really key to build those partnerships with key vendors and key stakeholders to say, hey, we've got an issue across our platform. We've got some latency. We've got some, challenges of, customers or agencies being able to access the system. Let's, figure out what we can do. And oftentimes it just really comes down to, patience and messaging. But as long as you're communicating, we found that the biggest challenge, through these times is patience and making sure that at the end of the day, we've, walked away with lessons learned and built that relationship to say, oh, this is what we need to do next time. And we take that to the next challenge and hopefully have a quicker, faster resolution.
We talked a little bit about this already, Jason, but just drive it home for me. How important is it for agencies to have that real-time visibility into IT infrastructure?
I think it's critically important. We talked about a couple of examples where there were disruptions or outages, but the reality is you can also leverage the data to continuously improve performance. And we've seen a number of examples of that where agencies are leveraging the real-time data, yes, in a more reactive mode to respond to incidents and issues, but also more proactively to continue to improve performance. And sometimes it's minor things like high resolution images that are leveraged by an application, which look great when you kind of set them up, and but have a negative impact on user experience, especially folks accessing via mobile devices. And other times it's things that are a little more complicated to identify, but being able to identify where in that ecosystem the disruption is occurring is really a key. The other thing that we're seeing more and more is these modern applications are critically dependent on APIs. And many times those APIs are making calls out to applications that are not owned by the agency. So it's not just the front end and the user experience, but it's also being able to make sure the back end dependencies are performing and being able to identify small disruptions or small things that may happen on a recurring basis that can be very difficult to identify. So it doesn't prevent anybody from processing a transaction or making a payment, but it might slow it down. And when you're looking to drive adoption and greater adoption, for example, in this case of digital payments, it's important to deliver a great experience, especially the first time, and then to gain that trust, and folks will continue to come back and use it in the future.
You're nodding your head at points of that. Was there something you wanted to add on to that, or maybe share how your agency is looking at some of these data to improve digital services?
Yes, we're looking at the same as Jason is saying, is look, to create that seamless path. A lot of what what we see is it's not, we don't see it as either or. Either you're making an electronic payment or it's secure. We see them as the same. They're one and the same. We know that there are risks out there associated with mailing paper checks, which is why we are, focused on that, providing the electronic alternatives and making that real time payment and those connectivity in that connectivity. Meanwhile, we know that there is the shift for identity management. And so when we talk about and being secure, when we talk about that same experience that Jason was talking about in the data, we're looking at that in terms of security, and you, as you've registered and login.gov or ID me, and you've created that experience of what it looks like to create an online government account, then you're used to that process. And once users get accustomed to that experience, and with one agency or one use case, they'll expect and recognize that in their interactions with others. And then it becomes, that continuous, seamless, real time interaction and that they're used to.
Whether it's fair or not, when we talk about seamless user experiences and cybersecurity measures, we often talk about them like they're at odds, right? Like, oh no, multi-factor authentication. Where's my phone? I got to go find it, right? I'm just trying to log in. How can we make online services safer without making them harder to use? Tannura, let's start with you, but Jason, you be thinking of your answer too.
Yes, Heather, like I was talking about in terms of login.gov and ID me, those platforms are, where we're going in terms of authenticating and making sure that security identity is across the board for the whole government. And as we look at those authentication pieces, it makes it a seamless necessity once you've logged in and once you've created that when you go to the next government entity or as you're transacting business with the federal government, you are a known entity and your authentication is recognized. So you're inherently getting that secure, safe authentication in every interaction. And by doing that, we maintain that security and we minimize the risk associated with all the interactions and how we offer services to anyone.
I love that. So I'm hearing consistency, familiarity. Jason, you want to add some other strategies?
Yeah, I think one of the other strategies is really unification. So being able to have that real-time visibility into the full collection of information from a security perspective. Multi-factor authentication is certainly one aspect of it, but real-time visibility into any application-related potential vulnerabilities before they could be exploited is another. Being able to have a strengthened security posture on the perimeter, being able to identify any potential data that may be unexpectedly moved in either inside or external to your organization. But really, the key, in our opinion, to being able to do that is being able to unify that information so you have access to the full breadth of it in real time. And then you can understand at any given point in time, are there any security related threats? While at the same time, being able to have that real time visibility into your user's digital experience. And if things are disrupting those, being able to identify, is this potentially being disrupted because of, for example, distributed denial of service attack? Or one of the other things we've been able to help agencies monitor is making sure that their data is being routed as expected and there's no unexpected routes injected that could potentially result in the data being compromised. So really, I think the one word I would use is having a unified strategy that looks at security holistically, as well as observability, and we kind of roll all that up under what we refer to as digital resilience.
I like that, digital resilience. So, Tannura, I'm going to kick over to you again. How can agencies balance the need for security with also the push to innovate, right? Because it's digital services are never really a one and done kind of deal. They're constantly evolving to meet what users want, what users need, changing tastes. What's your strategy?
So I think agencies, in order for agencies to balance that need for security with the need to innovate, I think that it should be seen as a couple. You've got to have both, and that they should go together. And as you innovate, um, having a eye to that security at the same time that you're innovating allows you the space and the flexibility to do both at the same time. Our focus in the Bureau of Fiscal Service is really around that payment integrity that we talked about, offering that modern and seamless, secure pay path means also layering that security on top of it. You can't have one without the other. And in order to ensure that we're doing that, we've identified that electronic digital wallets. If you're not comfortable with using a check, or you prefer not to give your bank account information, Apple Pay, Samsung, Amazon pay. We're trying to make sure that the government interactions are like what you would see in the private sector, and that in of itself yields another layer of security, another layer of comfort to not only the customer but then also to the agency, to build that relationship with the customer, because now they trust that their interaction will go seamless. And a long way to building a relationship and trust in the federal government is having a transaction that happens the way it should, the way you want it, the first time.
I like how you're talking about trust, because that's important, right? Because that's what's at risk if digital services don't go well, right?
Right.
So, Jason, I want to come back to you. What strategies can agencies use to maintain the quality and reliability of digital services with increasing cyber threats?
Yeah, one of the things, and I actually probably should have mentioned it earlier, is first and foremost, you really need to baseline current performance, right? So you're talking about innovating, and innovating could mean delivering additional options and outcomes. It could be delivering more seamless and simple experiences. It could be delivering better performances. But first and foremost, you need to understand, what does performance look like today, and being able to baseline that and use data. One of the agencies we're working with today are in the process of moving more of their applications and infrastructure to the cloud. But as they're doing that, they're expecting to be able to deliver better experiences. They're delivering applications with more microservices and leveraging more cloud native technologies. But the only way to know if you're going to actually deliver that outcome is to first and foremost baseline performance prior to the migration. And then from a security perspective, you're always looking to identify ways to improve your security posture, and strengthen it from an application infrastructure perspective, visibility. But one of the things I didn't highlight is that when you look at the, I guess, vast amount of data in terms of being able to understand your current position relative to cybersecurity, it's important to have not just a unified approach, but being able to have an AI driven approach, because there's just far too much information for people to manually sift through to really identify any potential threats. So being able to leverage a platform that unifies information, applies an AI driven approach to really identify potential threats and vulnerabilities that you take action against, I think is critical in this day and time.
And I'm going to stick with you for another question. How can agencies measure the success of their infrastructure and digital strategies? Are there key metrics that they should be looking at? And Tannura, I'm coming to you after this, so you can think while he speaks.
Yes, so I think absolutely there are key metrics. I think it really starts with understanding performance from your user's perspective. And that can be the public. So in that case, it's important to understand for any public facing services, what does the performance look like from different parts of the country or different parts of the world? And then, being able to identify when there's aberrations from that performance. And quite frankly, depending on where the application is hosted, the performance will be different from different parts of the country or world. So understanding that as your baseline, but still being able to proactively identify any change. And then for your employee facing applications, being able to do the same thing, but in terms of baselining expected performance, but being able to have that visibility everywhere your employees choose to work. Um, and some of the applications are certainly more sensitive when you think of things like collaboration technologies. So being able to have an intelligent way to understand the employee's experience. We spend a lot of time on collaboration technologies. In fact, for many folks, that's the applications that they use the most. So being able to make sure that they have consistently great experience with the technology they use that drives their productivity, and then being able to have a proactive approach to addressing anything that disrupts that. But ultimately, you need the baseline first, and then you need a automated and proactive way to identify anything that you need to take action against, and ideally doing that before the user realizes they have a problem.
Tannura, what do you look at when you're looking at all of your 400 agency partners?
400 agency partners, $5 trillion in collections of revenue. I think our primary goal that we've set out, that the metric that we're trying to drive through, is not only payment integrity, as we've discussed, of paying the right person, paying the right amount, but it's also driving out paper volume. We're looking at trying to minimize the manual processes associated with paper applications, paper forms, paper checks, and drive that to a more electronic and digital space. And pre-pandemic, we set a goal for ourselves to drive out 25% of that paper. And we are on target to have reductions of 43% of that paper. In working with agencies such as the Department of State, with their passport online renewal, instead of renewals coming in as a paper process, and you've stapled all of your driver's license, social security, all those papers together, and you've mailed them in with your check. Doing that upfront documentation online through the Department of State. And then all we have left is the electronic part of the payment. That has decreased our payment processing and paper intake drastically. Same with our work with the IRS in capturing that tax filing information up front and electronically. When you're on said application to file your return, you're entering that and you e-file, and then you also end up paying electronically. Those are the kinds of partnerships and agency engagements we are really trying to drive home to eliminate paper and the manual processes associated with it, and then ultimately driving down the cost of the government.
I love that, because I think a lot of times when we talk about digital experiences, I think we focus on the citizen, the person mailing in the check, but you're also talking about alleviating the paperwork burden on all of those agency employees, right?
Exactly. Across the federal government.
All right. Believe it or not, we are starting to run out of time here. So Jason, I'm going to ask you, do you have any final takeaways or advice you want to share with our audience as they work through their own digital service strategies?
I do, right? As you're looking at your digital strategies or digital transformations, we firmly believe you can do both. You can continue to innovate as well as strengthen your security posture. But we would just challenge you all to have a unified approach to digital resilience. and to be able to leverage a common set of data across your InfoSec team, your application teams, your network teams, but also your partners. And those partners could be other agencies, it could be cloud providers, it could be your ISPs. But being able to have that unified visibility will allow you to continue to deliver consistently great experiences and be able to take the appropriate actions to optimize the performance of your services over time.
Tannura, your advice and takeaways.
My advice is to our federal agency partners: if you are in need of financial management services and help, please, this is our plug, please reach out to a fiscal service. Let us offer you our subject matter expertise, our help in achieving your financial management need. We're striving to drive a fully electronic collections and payments remittance from receipt of the settlement and the payment and the interaction with the American public to the end result, to make sure the customer, your customer, has a seamless and trustworthy experience with the federal government. And we're here to help.
I love that. All right. Tannura and Jason, thank you so much for your time and sharing your experiences with our audience today. And to our wonderful audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Today's program will be available on demand, so you can come back and rewatch or perhaps share with your colleagues who might have missed it. For GovExec, I'm Heather Caldwell-Ware. Thanks so much for stopping by.